Okay, so here's an example of how we think about it. Here's a fish. It's a particularly loopy fish. It's kind of working its way through the reservoir. It has sort of 3 opportunities to encounter that predator. It misses all of them. It nails that predator, and it loses any opportunity to hit that predator. So basically, its survival is a product of that area and the density of the predators and the distance that it travels and the number of possible encounters with each predator. So if it was just going through once, straight, and could only encounter each predator once, then this would be it. It would only depend on the distance. No matter how fast or how slowly you move through, you're only going to hit each predator once. But there's a possibility of multiple encounters, and it's in that multiple encounters that survival changes as a function of movement. And it changes like this. The number of encounters are given by this random velocity or length scale versus the vective length scale squared plus 1. So if you have no randomness, this is 1. If you're very, very random, then you're going to increase the possible number of encounters for each predator. And if your predators are moving, then you just kind of add up that random movement of the predators. And so what does that mean in practice? Here we can show you how it works. First of all, here's sort of 10 prey moving through in this kind of MST walk with variance 0.8, action of 0.1. The theory says it should encounter each predator 1.28 times. The simulation encounters them 1.24 times. That works. If it moves more randomly, it increases its number of encounters per predator to close to 3. This is, I think some people might already intuit this is a really stupid strategy for a prey to go bouncing around back and forth looking to encounter predators. But if the predators move around, that increases their encounter rate. So even when the prey are very effective, the predators, by moving around, have some control over the encounter rates. So that's sort of a fundamental principle. And if we look at this sort of plot, this is the prey randomness. It has interest, and this is the encounter rates. So a prey has interest in driving this thing down, moving as straight through as possible through the system. But the predators have some control by increasing their randomness, which is these colors. They can increase their encounter rates. And this is sort of a very general schematic of encounter rates based on movement parameters. But I think we can learn a few things. Basically, we can learn that prey should minimize randomness in this sort of vective system. Predators should maximize randomness, but that's subject to constraints, like bioenergetic constraints in particular. And so if you think about the different predators in the Columbia River, there's piscivorous fish, but it takes much more work to move around a lot within water. And so they might, and depending on the flux of how many prey are coming, they also have strategies of switching to bunker foraging. So if they can't drive this up, if they can't search a lot, and they're not getting enough of a sort of flux going through without moving too much, then they might just switch their prey base. Whereas birds, for example, it takes them much less energy to cover much more ground. And so their sort of characteristic scale of movement predation will be potentially higher. So that's sort of the conceptual kind of conclusion we can get out of this. Another one is as far as time and distance scales go, then basically the Columbia River is more of a gauntlet type process. Most of the predation is distance dependent. There's management approaches of they like flushing the river to increase survival, and that may or may not help for a variety of reasons, but predation is not probably one of them, except that it might play more of a factor depending on the strength of, say, the impact of birds. So if birds were the main predators, then it would make sense to flush them through more quickly. If fish were the main predators, they might not. So there's sort of some hand-wavy conclusion to here. I did a little bit of work on two-dimensional encounters too. So here we have, again, these sort of movements. If you move straight through a field of predators of density rho, then you're going to hit predators at a sort of consistent rate that's proportional to that density and your velocity. That's your encounter rate. If you're moving sort of more curvily, then you're sort of covering less ground. And if you're moving very, very, very tightly long way, then you're not covering very much ground, you're going to lower your encounter rates. And so I try to quantify that in terms of these movement parameters, these scale parameters. And ran a whole bunch of simulations. These are sort of encounter rates. For different length scales of movement. Length scales. So the mean distance, or sorry, the typical characteristic distance between targets is sort of this line right here. And you see that the closer you are to it, and then above it, the higher your encounter rate is going to be. And that's sort of a fundamental thing, because it tells us, so we can sort of express that, estimate it. Because that tells us that if you're going to move around, you're going to encounter prey, then you need to really move at the scale of your length scale of randomness should be about on the order of the distance between the prey. And sometimes, like we've seen that we can measure, we can sort of estimate these scales from data. You can infer something about the distribution of the prey or the density of that prey from the movements, assuming that they're matching that. So that's kind of another sort of theoretical conclusion. So forager sigma should be greater than lambda, which is that typical distance, but smaller than the patch size. So once you move out of this location where there are prey, then it's time to turn around. Okay. So scales of movement tell us almost everything we need to know about encounter rates. That's pretty much the conclusion of that.